Imagine receiving a promise from God and then watching our entire life fall apart. That is what happened to Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, forgotten in prison, and yet through every chapter, one truth remained. The Lord was with Joseph. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob. His father loved him deeply and gave him a special robe, which made his brothers jealous. Then Joseph began having dreams. In one dream, his brothers' bundles of grain bowed down before his. In another, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down before him. His brothers hated him for it. One day when Joseph went to find them in the fields, they saw him coming from a distance. "Here comes the dreamer." They threw him into a pit and eventually sold him to traders traveling to Egypt. For 20 pieces of silver, Joseph went from being a beloved son to becoming a slave. His brothers returned home with his robe covered in blood, and Jacob believed his son was dead. Joseph was 17 years old. His dream seemed impossible now, but God had not forgotten him. In Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, a powerful official. And once again, Scripture tells us the Lord was with Joseph. Joseph worked faithfully and eventually became responsible for Potiphar's entire household. But then Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him. Joseph refused. He said, "How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" When she could not get what she wanted, she accused Joseph of assaulting her. Potiphar believed her. Joseph had done the right thing and was thrown into prison. Have you ever done what was right and still ended up suffering because of it? Joseph could have believed God had abandoned him, but Scripture repeats the same truth. The Lord was with Joseph. Even in prison, there Joseph interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker. Everything happened exactly as Joseph predicted. Before the cupbearer left, Joseph asked him, "When things go well for you, remember me." But the cupbearer forgot him. For 2 more years, Joseph remained in prison. 2 years of silence, 2 years of waiting, but heaven had not forgotten his name. Then one night, Pharaoh had troubling dreams. 7 healthy cows were swallowed by 7 thin cows. Then 7 healthy heads of grain were swallowed by 7 thin ones. No one in Egypt could explain the dreams. Suddenly, the cupbearer remembered Joseph. Pharaoh ordered him to be brought from prison. Joseph stood before the most powerful man in Egypt. Pharaoh said, "I've heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Joseph could have taken the credit. Instead, he answered, "I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Joseph explained that the dreams meant Egypt would experience 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of devastating famine. He had advised Pharaoh to store grain during the years of plenty so the nation could survive the famine. Pharaoh was amazed. He said, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" And then everything changed. Pharaoh placed his signet ring on Joseph's hand, dressed him in the fine clothing, and gave him authority over Egypt. In a single day, Joseph went from prisoner to governor. He was 30 years old. 13 years had passed since his brothers sold him. 13 years of pain. 13 years of waiting, but not one of those years had been wasted. Then the famine came. People from surrounding nations traveled to Egypt to buy grain. Among them were Joseph's brothers. When they entered Egypt, they bowed before the governor. Joseph recognized them immediately, but they did not recognize him. And in that moment, Joseph remembered his dreams. The brothers who had once hated him were now bowing before him. Joseph had every reason to seek revenge. He had the power to destroy them, but he chose something greater. He chose forgiveness. Eventually, Joseph could no longer hide his identity. He sent everyone else out of the room. Then he wept and he said, "I am Joseph." His brothers were terrified, but Joseph told them, "Do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves, because you sold me here, for God sent me ahead of you to preserve life." And then came one of the most powerful statements in Scripture. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Joseph didn't pretend that what they had done was acceptable. The betrayal was real. The pain was real. The evil was real. But Joseph could now see something his brothers could not. God had been working through every chapter. If Joseph had never been sold, he would never have gone to Egypt. If he had never gone to Egypt, he would never have served Potiphar. If he had never been falsely accused, he would never have gone to prison. If he had never gone to prison, he would never have met the cupbearer. And if the cupbearer had remembered him too soon, Joseph might never have stood before Pharaoh at exactly the right moment. What looked like a series of tragedies had become the path God used to save countless lives. Joseph's story is not ultimately about a man who went from a pit to a palace. It's about a God who never stopped working. The pit taught Joseph to trust. Slavery taught him to serve. False accusation taught him integrity. Prison taught him patience. God wasn't simply preparing a throne. He was preparing Joseph's heart. Maybe that is what God is doing in your life too. Maybe you are living through a season that makes no sense. Maybe someone betrayed you. Maybe you did what was right and still suffered. Maybe you have been praying for something for years and nothing seems to change. Remember Joseph. When he was in the pit, he couldn't see the palace. When he was a slave, he couldn't see the future. When he was in prison, he couldn't see Pharaoh's throne. And when the cupbearer forgot him, it probably felt like God had forgot him too. But God had never lost control. God's silence does not mean God's absence. While Joseph was waiting, God was working. While Joseph was suffering, God was preparing. While Joseph was in prison, God was preparing the moment that would change his life. We see one page. God sees the entire book. We see delay. God sees perfect timing. We see suffering. God sees transformation. So don't give up because you are in a chapter you don't understand. Keep doing what is right. Keep being faithful. Keep trusting God, because maybe your pit's not the end. Maybe your prison is not your punishment. Maybe the delay that hurts so much today is preparing you for something you cannot yet imagine. Joseph's story reminds us what people intend for evil, God can use for good. Your story is not over. The author is still writing. And the same God who was with Joseph in the pit in slavery, in prison, and before Pharaoh, is still faithful today. If this message encouraged you, share it with someone who needs to remember that God is still working, even when heaven seems silent. Subscribe for more biblical stories and worship songs. And if you trust God's timing, leave a comment. I trust God's timing because your story is not over. God is still writing.